Well, hey there, internet. I was going to say thank you for joining us, but my guess is that at this point, nobody is joining us because this is the first few seconds of our first ever GriffinWink Break Room live stream. The idea of this is that we at GriffinWink, as advertising nerds slash professionals, just love getting together, talking over the latest stuff in advertising, how it's relevant, is it relevant, what's going on, what's happening. And we always have these conversations, and then we always think, hey, how fantastic would it be if we were able to share this kinds of stuff with our clients, with our contacts, with just anybody else out there. So this is our attempt to indoctrinate all of you into what we're thinking and how we go about thinking about advertising and marketing as GriffinWink Advertising. And so this was actually the brainchild of Eric Mayhall, who we'll welcome into the chat currently. Hey, Eric. Oh, already muting issues. Come on, man.
I know, right? I'm a rookie at this.
Your
That's
big
terrible.
entrance. I love
As
it.
I come in on the first ever episode of this idea that we had, and
That's
I
when you just put your
completely
thumbs
botch
up.
it. Yeah.
And let's see. And then our third panelist for today is Trace Thomas, who's our digital marketing coordinator. Sup, Trace?
Hey, how are y'all doing?
Hey, got it on the first try. I love it. So as we were thinking of this idea, so this is what I wrote down to introduce this as the premise for the break room. We are a multi-channel, semi-professional, mostly improvised, hopefully informative broadcast experiment from the minds at GriffinWink Advertising. And I figure that pretty much covers it.
I love that. Yeah, you hit all the adjectives and more. Yeah, I'm not sure what else we can even add in there.
Well, so the idea here is that on Wednesday at 2 p.m. Central, 1 p.m. Mountain each week, we're going to be coming on here kind of as a lunch break room, water cooler style, just panel. And we are live streaming it to progressively more and more platforms. I think today we're on Facebook and YouTube Live, right? And we're hoping to add in some more platforms after that. And the entire idea is to just take however long we have each week, just to share some of our ideas in a little bit less of a like a formal setting, right? You know, we all have meetings with clients or meetings with prospects or meetings with each other, and everything we talk about is always put through filters, put through a lot of different kind of processes. And so ultimately, the kinds of conversations that we have just between each other, even as we're working here remotely, which most of us are right now between our Amarillo, Lubbock, and Albuquerque offices, we still kind of have these conversations where we thought, you know, this is stuff that people need to know, business owners, other advertising people, students, people looking to get into the advertising industry. We think it's good stuff. You know, time will tell whether that's correct. So that's our goal here, is just to come live on these live stream formats. We're going to actually it'll be post produced as well up on Anchor in the podcasting format. So here shortly you'll be able to listen to it you know, wherever you get podcasts. And then I'm excited about it. So the idea is just and to the one other thing is we're hoping to have kind of rotating panelists, right? So it's not just like our three bearded faces all the time. Like,
gonna get sick of us pretty quickly, so we want to make sure we're cycling in the other professionals and keeping things fresh, because man, you know, we can all talk. And, gonna be burnout's gonna be quick. But
well, that's why Eric and I wanted to get this happen, and Trace is like, okay, well, I'll join in too. So Trace just stares at us blankly while we talk most of the time. But no, so
I do chime in. It's really nice little nuggets, I swear.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's like we're the ones that ramble, and Trace is thinking, and then he'll deliver the actual nugget of wisdom. We just need to tee Trace up.
Yes, our wise the one who sits back and observes before speaking. Yeah, exactly. The sage of GriffinWink.
You said the one that sits back and observes before speaking. I'm like, do we have anyone like that?
I think that's the antithesis of advertising industry, though. It's
yeah, exactly.
First, make sure it makes sense halfway after you're done speaking it.
Yeah, exactly. And then go to the creatives and say, can you do what we just said that we
that
could
we
do?
just came up with. Yeah.
Can you please make that happen? No, it's fun. Well, I think that's actually a good lead into let's just tell everybody what we do here at GriffinWink. Like, what are our roles? What kind of unique perspective are we coming to this conversation with? Because I think for this first episode, we've got a pretty good little mix of creative and execution and accounts and IT and strategy. So Trace, why don't you go first and tell us, just introduce everybody to who you are.
Yeah, so as you mentioned earlier, I'm like the digital marketing coordinator or specialist or whatever fancy word you want to throw at the end of it. And it's an interesting role because it's kind of a hybrid role. I kind of work within both the media department and the web side of things, so web development side. So basically, anytime Eric has something for me to do, I go do that. And then anytime the media side has anything to do, I'm the one doing that. And then every once in a while, Kevin will be like, "Hey, I also need you to do something." So, but yeah, I'm kind of all over the place with it. I do a little bit of Google AdWords, or not AdWords anymore. Sorry, Google Ads. I do some back end stuff, on our development side of the sites. Do a lot of SEO stuff as well, getting everything like that going. So it's kind of, it's just whatever needs to be done, I kind of get it done.
Yeah, Trace is our utility player. I can't tell you how many times a week where Trace comes to like one of us and said, and we ask him to do something, and he says, "Is that part of my job description?" And we're like, "It is now." We're like, "Or is that on was that supposed to be on my plate?" We're like, "It is now."
He's the fixer.
He's the fixer. Yeah. He's our fixer.
Yeah. The connective glue. The
glue that holds it all together.
So it's been fun. I haven't been at GriffinWink. I'm one of the newer hires. I've been here a few months now, and I've just really enjoyed the time so far being here. And yeah, just expanding my role and learning more about it, and also being like, hey, I think someone needs to be doing this. Like, when it comes to this podcast, I'm going to be the one doing a lot of the and live stream and stuff. I'm going to be doing a lot of the behind the scenes stuff for it. And I was like, hey, I don't mind doing, throw me on that. So a lot of our own GriffinWink's own internal marketing stuff I'm going to be doing as well. And that's kind of a responsibility of mine. So I think that kind of sums up. I'm getting new roles all the time. And also I do photography.
Trace by trade is a professional. By trade, Trace is a professional photographer, but we got a hold of him and he's like, by the way, I have all of this other stuff I can do. And we're like, why don't you do that now?
So I'm going to Amarillo tomorrow for a shoot for GriffinWink, and working with a client or two while I'm there and getting some photos. So yeah, again, just kind of a jack of all trades, master of none.
I love it.
And getting it done.
Yeah, Trace is slowly, the excitement goes on a curve, right? He's really excited, and then we put more and more stuff on him, and then he hits the top, and he's like, oh no, are they going to keep giving me stuff? And then he learns it, and he gets excited again. So no, it's great. It's great to have Trace on. Funny quick story back. It was 10 years ago now. Yeah. Trace and I were in school together, and we joined a study abroad trip to Spain. So we were just in Spain for a month. And then just kind of lost touch afterwards. And 10 years later, he just applies to the agency. And that was crazy. And I happened to be the one that actually fielded his resume. So crazy small world.
Wow.
I didn't even know you were working there. I just saw y'all were hiring and was like, oh, this seems like a cool company. I'll throw in my hat.
And then you saw Kevin was working there, and you're like, "Oh no, I've made a terrible mistake."
Yeah, I backpedaled so fast that it was too late. The moment already started.
We already got you. Yeah. Sweet. Well, thank you, Trace. And so like Trace said, he's going to be doing a lot of the post-production work as well. So inevitably, when he cuts our ramblings down to like little 5-minute or less 30-second snippets, and you hear those later on any of our social medias, he's the one that's taking our ramblings and cutting them down and making sure that there's some actual meat on that bone there. So thank you in advance, Trace. Eric, you're up. Go for it. Who the heck are you?
I am Eric. I am the web director at GriffinWink, which kind of means I handle the web side of things. So websites, web development projects, web design projects, as well as search engine optimization. web hosting and all the servers and things like that. And then I have a team of incredible people that makes the department work flawlessly underneath me, and I kind of help make everything work the way it should, is to sum it up quickly and easily. But yeah, no, I think I'm, if you have any digital accounts with us, I'm in there somewhere, you know, whether it's analytics or web hosting, what have you. I've probably talked to you at some point, but yeah.
Yeah, and Eric, sorry, I'm trying to think of fun anecdotes for each person on here. But Eric, we found Eric. He came on with GriffinWink after his first foray into SEO in the EDM electronic music industry, right? And you were doing crazy stuff there.
Yeah. That's initially kind of where I learned a lot of like web development and search engine optimization techniques. Was working with an incredible partner I had at the time. We started what was just a simple blog initially, and kind of built that up into what ended up being one of the largest kind of media outlets for electronic music in the world, just through, you know, constant content creation, as well as really good, you know, search engine optimization best practices. And it got to a point where we were seeing, you know, millions of visitors every single month to that site. So that's kind of where I earned my chops, since my degree is actually in public relations. So still, you know, tangentially similar, but not really technical. So
yeah,
all the technical side of stuff was really self-taught and just kind of done through trial and error on my own platforms. And then I went into the agency world and never looked back.
One of the things we always say about digital marketing, if we have like interns that are asking us, like, how do I get more experience, or people that want to come on board with us, say what kind of experience we need to have, it's kind of just like the hard knocks school of Google at this point, right? Like it's, you know, it's more complicated than that. But I'd say most of the people that are on board at our agency right now have learned most of what they do practically through just doing it, through trial and error, and building yourselves up through just taking the initiative to get certified in all these different platforms. And so I was just having a conversation with a job candidate for us the other day, and yeah, she was asking that. I said, honestly, it's not so much about you know, just the degree, some sort of communications focused degree, which I think we all started out with, gives you that theoretical knowledge, the hypothetical knowledge, but then you have to build upon that. And that's really kind of where each of us has fallen into our like key professional roles. Like I think all three of us have learned what we do right now through just doing it. And the best, most practical application for it is just getting out there and doing it. So no, it's pretty cool.
Help forums will be your best friend, you know.
It's kind of just the nature of like digital marketing right now too, is, you know, people, and I feel bad for a lot of college students that kind of want to go into the digital marketing sphere because they're like, how do we get this knowledge? You know, how do we learn what search engine optimization is? And, you know, you turn to the universities and you kind of wonder why they're not looking, you know, more forward and kind of creating lessons plans around real applications of the platforms that are kind of omnipresent now. And it just comes down to, it changes so fast. By the time you create a course around it and start teaching it and get a curriculum approved, it's 100% different, you know, and it's like all of a sudden and things that used to be best practices are now actively detrimental. It is bizarre, you know, so it's, you got to dedicate yourself to the self-learning process of it all.
And that's why in school, a lot of the courses we took, right, were like media ethics or like general campaign structure or strategy or research methods, because all these things, all of those things can have a bearing and do have a bearing on whatever you learn after the fact. Things like a class like research methods basically teaches you how to then go out and learn everything else that you're gonna need to know later on. And so overwhelmingly, that's what we've seen, especially when it comes to the realm of digital advertising and the digital agency space, is that it just moves so fast that unless you've taught yourself something new in the last month, you're probably going to be behind.
And I'm glad you bring up research methods, because one of the biggest shifts that we've seen recently is that of Google Analytics. You know, that is a platform that I think we're all used to. I think most of our clients and just kind of people, if you're, you know, interested in digital marketing, you've at the very least heard the term Google Analytics. And have just changed their platform in a big, big way, to whereas when new accounts are created, they are starting to phase out a couple of KPIs, or key performance indicators, that a lot of people have started to get very comfortable and used to.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to create some confusion. What do you guys think?
Yeah, initially some confusion, but the whole point of this, or if Google is to be believed, and I'm the conspiracy theorist of our little group, I'm always the devil's advocate, right? Like, does Google really have our best interest at heart? Let's talk about that. I did that to y'all yesterday, and y'all just like completely shut me down. You're like, Kevin, stop taking it so like it's not that big of a deal. But
we know Google's evil. We know they do not have our best interest.
You're not saying anything new, but yeah, this idea that there are some really like tightly held indicators from Google Analytics that people love to use to justify the effectiveness of marketing, and those have all completely changed now, or not all of them, but a few key ones have completely changed. But I think for the better. And Eric, you can kind of explain that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we should say that this is in a series of change. So it's not like every single one of your Google Analytics account is now magically different, but we're starting to see this roll over. And I should also warn people, when the accounts do roll over, there's an update in the permission process, which makes it a little more complex if you need to disconnect accounts from your account and try to give them to somebody else. So just warning for anybody out there like us, it is something you want to look at before these updates roll out. But when you create new Google Analytic properties right now, it is this updated format. And overall, what we're seeing is Google is moving away from cookies, which again is one of those terms that is kind of synonymous with digital marketing, and a lot of people don't really know what cookies are. And what they are is basically like little remnants that websites leave in your browser. So your browser, like Chrome or Firefox or Internet Edge from Microsoft, if you're using one of those, it's going to collect different little pieces of data from each of the websites you go to. And basically it does that for tracking purposes, for analytics. It does that so websites load faster. If you're visiting a website constantly over and over again, your browser will take more of the assets on that homepage, so it loads the page quicker because it knows that it's coming. So cookies have a couple different functions, but the biggest issue with cookies is there are major privacy concerns, because people all of a sudden are now realizing in 2021 how much personal data that they've freely given up to so many of these large companies like Google or Facebook or Amazon, in terms of when you opt in to create an account with one of these companies, what you're actually giving them access to is, at one point Facebook could listen to your microphone, at another point the Alexa was recording every single thing in your home, at
I think
another
that's
point
Alexa freaks me out.
There's a lot of red flags with it, and it's now really just the conversation starting to turn serious. We're starting to see congressional hearings. We're starting to see internet law really be exactly internet law and media law starting to be updated now. We all heard about Section 230. That was a thing that you couldn't avoid hearing about for a couple months last year in the election lead up to things. So things are being reviewed now, but what that means is the companies know that they have to start providing more privacy measures to consumers. Even if, we willingly entered these agreements, they were so long that they were viewed as the government's kind of saying like, hey, you guys knew exactly what you were doing and it's time to clean it up. What do you guys think about these new like privacy developments, or like, what do you think about how data and personal data kind of exists on the internet right now?
But, the big argument was always like, well, what do you have to hide? If you're not doing anything wrong. But a lot of us have realized like it's a little more complex than that. It's like, not that you have anything to hide, but like we don't know exactly what this data is all being used for. And so even like the tailored marketing they're able to do, while some of it is like nice, like as we mentioned earlier, I like photography. So when I get photo ads for like photo equipment and stuff, that doesn't bother me. But whenever you can start using those ads to be tailored in a political landscape, or even, to me, and then like even more like corporate interest in, sometimes, and you can actually do these tailored messaging to really try to persuade, the public, whichever way, it can get very gray area. And we've seen over the last, probably 6 years how like dangerous it can be in some ways. So yeah, I think it's good that they're cracking down on it. And that just means we have to be more creative on how we reach people. That's fine with me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really
my take on it.
It's this give and take as an ad agency that relies on being able to deliver impressions effectively for our clients, but then also us needing to have a system of ethics about us as to how we conduct ourselves and how we perform for those clients. It's a constant tug of war in our heads whenever we're considering new platforms or new strategies, kind of how we, as kind of the middleman there, we're the ones actually delivering these ads. So when you do get a Google responsive display ad for a new set of tires because you were searching how to change a tire, how to change a bald tire, or like how long should you go before you change your tires? Like, what is the line there between being helpful and then just kind of being a little bit creepy, right? Whenever I tell people what I do, they're like, "Oh, are you the creepy people that are following me around Facebook?"
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, kind of yes and no. But we're in a very interesting position as that middleman, to where we need to really be the ones that have our ears most on the pulse of this and really have some of the strongest opinions about it. But my thought, as all these class action suits were popping up, I can't remember if it was earlier this year or end of 2020. It was one for Google and one for Facebook. Both were going through their own kind of class action suits surrounding privacy, right?
Antitrust as well, is they're facing a lot of different hurdles at the moment.
And everyone was like, well, that's fantastic that this is one fantastic step towards being held accountable, and this is what we need to be doing more of. But when you look into kind of the wording of these these lawsuits that are coming out, that they hold all sorts of similarities to remember when Microsoft was going through like and I don't even remember the specifics, but like Bill Gates was going to have to either sell Microsoft or do something crazy with
antitrust,
antitrust, monopolization. It was a whole monopoly thing. It was just like, you've created a monopoly, you need to break down your monopoly, and he lost, and everyone's like, yay, down with the monopoly. And then nothing happened for 2 years, and then they settled out of court on something different. And practically what we saw as the public was not a whole lot different from what there was. So that's going to be what I'm most interested to see in the coming years is this accountability going to have follow through to it? And are these sort of antitrust or class action suits, are they going to have any sort of weight behind them that results in tangible change, not just a bunch of conversations and not just like a slap on the wrist and like, oh yes, we held them accountable with our freedom of speech, and then something happens behind the scenes and we get like a slightly tweaked version of what we had, but practically not a lot changes. And that's me being again cynical and kind of conspiracy theory but
I have a lot of opinions on the nuances of late stage capitalism, but that's for a whole other podcast.
That's for your other podcast.
Yeah, exactly. But what I did want to say is, we kind of mentioned, a few people mentioned the whole idea of like, yeah, you have nothing to hide. And it's like, yeah, honestly, that's true. But it's like, I also don't want it to be basic public knowledge, like how many Corgi videos or Resident Evil 7 videos I watch on YouTube, because they're going to be like, this guy's like really lonely. But it's
already public. You post too many pictures of your Corgis anyways for us to not
exactly right. The Corgi thing's out of the bag. You're right. There's no denying that.
I already feel judged enough when my iPhone tells me how many hours I looked at my screen this week,
Right.
I don't need any more.
It's or like when how TikTok has that video that comes up like every 30 or 45 minutes, and it's like, hey, you should go outside. And I'm like, man.
Or when your Garmin or your Fitbit goes, it seems like you've been sitting for 45 minutes. Time to get up.
Right. You're just getting shamed into being a healthier person by my personal robot. I'm like, great. This is exactly how I saw the future happening. But what I would tell everybody to do is you might actually not realize just how much data something like Google has collected on you. And I always tell people to do this because it's a fun experiment. You can actually go to your account and you kind of go up to the little corner where there's 9 little dots. And it'll either be an option there or you can have to kind of click in and view more, but you get to your actual navigation panel.
I'm like doing it right now as you talk on my other screen.
If you go to data and personalization, there's a things to create and do panel, and you can like go to your Google dashboard and you'll actually see the services and summary of all of your data. And there's ways to request all of your Google data and all of the data Google has collected on you. I will put how to do this in the comment of this live stream right now too.
Sweet.
Because it's worth
that
doing.
Multi-channel I was talking about, multimedia presentation, practical application.
Right.
Sorry, I totally derailed you.
So this is the link right there. And it is, I mean, it's shocking just how much you can actually find out by looking at this. You're like, I think I did it once and it literally downloaded like 5,000 or 6,000 pages of data. And at that point, it's like, that is yeah, exactly. And it blows you away when you're like, like this is a little more than I realized, just how much you do interact online with things and just how much of that information is actually being collected and then kind of applied to like a hollow human being, if you will. And Google's basically making a digital artificial intelligence version of Eric based off of this data. And then it takes that AI and it tells everybody, hey, we'll sell this data to you for, the highest bidding price, whatever the cost per click is at the time. Yeah. So you get in front of this digital artificial version of this guy that we created that we know he loves corgis. So we know if you serve this, you have a better, chance at actually getting return on investment. And it's like, wow, there are ethical implications in that in terms of how data is stored and connected to individuals. It's one thing if that was anonymous and they were building this artificial intelligence army, but that data is connected to me as a human being,
this Ready Player One version of you. That's crazy.
It is. And that's kind of what gets scary, which brings us back to why cookies are now getting phased out. And they're stopping. They're basically what they're doing is they're not saying we're going to stop collecting your data. What they're saying is we're going to stop collecting your data and have it attached to you. But we're going to create it and we're still going to use it however we want to use it because that's our right, XYZ. I don't necessarily disagree with that either, but it means that certain measures and specifically audience demographic information is going out the window, which changes a lot of ways of how we target, on social media, how we target with Google Ads, how we target on other, digital platforms that we're doing paid advertisements on. And it doesn't necessarily make it harder, but it really forces us to think outside of the box of how we've traditionally kind of built personas. Don't y'all think?
Yeah, I think so. Cause you can no longer, and I've kind of had that. I've gone down this tangent before. But it's this idea that actually the amount of information available to advertisers makes for a lot of lazy digital marketers that don't actually want to have these conversations, right? They're like, if this is available to me to market for my clients so that they make more sales and my budget goes up, then why wouldn't I use it? But not having an understanding of the implications of that, or where it really comes from, or how it even works. They just know it's been packaged for them to be able to set up targeting parameters to then deliver advertising.
Yeah.
Whereas those who are really going to succeed through this, because if those go away, or those are going to change regardless of what they look like, it's going to change. And so those digital marketers that have these kinds of conversations, that dig in deep to see how we're going to be able to target without the use of a lot of these kind of laziness measures, right? Things that just make it really easy for some people to target some audiences for some industries. And people have built whole marketing agencies or whole marketing freelancer businesses off of that, which is interesting. Because you're going to have have your strategy team is going to have to be as strong as your execution team. Whereas right now, in some spaces, strategy and execution are packaged up into this nice little software that allows you to target very easily based on all of this information that we have, because the digital picture of a person right now is very clear. Like you were saying, I don't think I actually ever thought of it before today as they are building an artificial intelligence version of you. And then that is what they're presenting to people. So the more pixelated and the more fuzzy that artificial intelligence, there, I just came up with something new. The artificial intelligence version of you looks, the harder it's going to be to actually be able to feed them something that works. Which is kind of the catch-22, is when done right, the amount of information we have on people can really target things that they're actually looking for, that they find value in, and that will help improve their online experience, and then by extension, whatever physical experience they're having. But that's a small fraction, I think, of the people that use this information are actually using it that way. And most of the time it's clickbait and, the next new dry fit t-shirt, and I've been getting those fresh, clean tea ads on YouTube for 2 months now. And I'm like, guys, stop it. That and B&H photo. I don't know. But I think that's really interesting. And it's going to take some getting used to, and some kind of more intense strategy, which means Trace's job is going to continue to get more little line items to it.
Yeah. Well, that's, and that's the other thing, is Google's anticipating, because they're the one doing these changes, that they are already implementing, which is what kind of how we started this, is with analytics. Their terminology and what they're actually measuring is going to be changing, which I can't exactly remember exactly what you said it's going to be, Eric, but it actually sounds like it's going to be more efficient or useful. I don't know what word you want to use.
It's going to be able to actually be an effective measurement, rather than just kind of this kind of ethereal, almost, analogy for what it should be, or something. I don't know, Eric, you can talk what is actually, because we kind of got derailed from that earlier, but what is actually changing on Google Analytics?
So the big thing is, currently there's a lot of demographic information available. That's going to be trimmed down significantly, down to basically city and age profiles. I believe you might be able to get some level of device off of that based off of screen size. But as of now, I can go into analytics and actually see what device somebody was using, what browser they were using, what some people might kind of say is creepy level of information. I should note that what's publicly available to us, tracking that, is not connected to individuals. Within Google it is, but in our accounts, we're not seeing Cindy Lou Sue, was on the site for 12 minutes on Internet Explorer in, Abilene or something like that. But we have all that information outside of the person's name. So that's being removed. And then they're doing some updates, which y'all two were just kind of alluding to, which is what I would call quality of life updates. There's some metrics that people have really been connected to over the years. And one of them is bounce rate, which in my humble opinion is a very flawed metric, because what a bounce technically is, in definition, is when somebody would navigate to a page and leave the page without taking a step and interacting with the page. For example, clicking, filling out a form. Really just a click would be enough to actually call it not a bounce. But what the issue was with that is for some websites, the necessity to click isn't there, and this is why it used to be a major search engine ranking factor was your bounce rate, and they phased that out of their algorithm a while ago, but it still stayed as an analytic in Google Analytics that people would point to, because it kind of showed like the effectiveness of pulling your website into a visitor. But if I run a business that's primarily service based and my goal is to get my phone number in front of somebody so they call me, and I have my website set up like that, then they won't need to click. They'll go to the website, they'll get the phone number, and they'll call, and that'll be what they need to do. If somebody's using a computer, they can do that, or if they have it on their phone right there as well. So it was difficult because people would say, man, my bounce rate is 50%. 50% of the people that visit my site leave without interacting with it. When in reality, that might not necessarily be true, And what Google's done is thrown bounce rate out the window, not a thing anymore. And I'm happy about that. And because they've replaced it with something called engaged sessions, which is when a session is engaged for more than 10 seconds, which makes sense because if I accidentally click on a link, I'm just going to go back, or I'm going to X out of it. I'm going to be like, whoops, didn't mean to do that, and get out. But if I meant to click on something and I spend at least 10 seconds on that web page, for whatever reason, I was engaged with something, whether that was, of an intention that I had or something grabbed my attention. So it kind of replaces it with something a little more modern. I think a lot of people have been trying to do digital marketing strategies for many years that revolved around landing pages, which bounce rate was always an issue with the landing pages, and engaged sessions will definitely be able to provide a much more measured and intentional analytic behind it. That's what I always remind people is there's so much analytics, but if you really look at the different KPIs, is there really an intention behind that KPI as much as just kind of like a missing third variable that's affecting it somewhere?
And just the term engaged sessions over bounce rate, the term bounce rate, if you were not in marketing, if you'd never tracked analytics on a website, not a business owner, and someone told you like, hey, the bounce rate of my website is really high, I need to fix that, I'd be like, cool. Like, but if you to say something like engaged sessions, that almost just, it eliminates a whole part of the process where there's this perception that you need to be, like really in the know about, all these buzzwords. You don't, it's not buzzword based. It's literally just, hey, here's what this is, and we'll explain to you how this works. And it has an actual physical, it feels more measurable. And that's our hope, I think, that particularly for us, as we're seeing this happen across Google Analytics, is that we'll be able to be more intentional in our conversations. Whereas, a whole few minutes of conversation for me when I talk with a client had to be around like what the actual utility of bounce rate was. It's a lot easier for me to explain what engagement on a site looks like if I have that metric in front of me. And I think it leads to more kind of helpful, productive conversations around analytics as well.
Yeah, definitely.
But that Trace, did you have any thoughts on that?
No, I mean, I just, they're just making it, I think, a more, like we were talking about, efficient way to actually figure out how much people are engaging with the website. And then they've also made it easier, Google that is, to, track what people are doing on the website in general as well, beyond just like engagement. But, now they've, I don't know how long ago it was that they really started, but it's been within the last year or two with the Google Tag Manager. And now it's just, now instead of every time you want to track something, you have to contact the developer of the website or whatever, you can just have them put in this one tag manager code on the site. And then anytime you want to track a new thing, and whether it's an analytics, whether it's, ads, conversions, or anything like that, you can just go in on your own on the tag manager side and actually, follow it and see what's happening. A lot easier because you can just do it yourself and set it up. So
yeah. And so I guess that's kind of Google trying to have the best of both worlds, where they're trying to provide people the clearest possible analytics into who is on their site and why and what actions they take. But it seems like they're going about it a little bit more transparently, which is going to be, I think that's going to be the tug of war, is how do you, kind of like I said earlier, how do you manage the transparency aspect with the still needing to get the proper information in front of the proper people aspect. And so Google, for whatever you think of them, seriously or jokingly, as far as being Big Brother in 1984 and all of that, it seems like from an agency perspective, what we've seen over the past few months or even a year, I think Google Local Services even is an additional service that Google's had that has helped transparency as well. This idea that you can have an ad placement on Google that is based upon you being a vetted business that has undergone a background check. It's no longer just pay to play necessarily. They still make you pay to play once you've passed the background check and been vetted as a Google certified, but Google guaranteed business. But it's it's doing that same thing, right? It's twofold. It's presenting more qualified leads to the right people while being more transparent. So that's the line that's going to need to be towed moving forward to show that every effort that's being made towards towards effective marketing is also an effort that's being made towards privacy and accountability.
Absolutely. It is interesting that they're taking the stance of forcing everybody to move in the direction of Google Tag Manager. You used to have the option to, if you just want to throw some, AdWords code or a universal analytics code and kind of track everything differently. And now they're saying consolidate it. And, I can't say that that's out of a concern for privacy, but it is interesting that Google is attempting in a way to consolidate what information is actively out there. Because, when you can inspect elements of a site, you could collect your UA, your Universal Analytics ID, your AdWords ID. There's a lot of data that you can scrape from people having all these different codes in their headers of their websites. And now with Google Tag Manager, it's kind of a step of saying, they're forcing people to just put in their single tag, which is then, the database Google has you set up offsite is pinged whenever that site's visited. So it's kind of a different setup as well, which in a way takes a step in the right direction for privacy too. But it's just it's interesting to see all of this happen proactively, as I think it's starting to look more and more like Google is going to face a very serious antitrust consequence here. We just saw Facebook, the FTC recommended that Facebook sell Instagram and WhatsApp. They want them to do that. That wasn't a court order to do so yet, but they recommended that the companies do that. So we're probably going to see a breakup of Instagram, Facebook, and WhatsApp, because that's always been a big one in the news, specifically about non-compete stuff, how they were just buying up competitors. And, Google's going to face that too. They're going to go through their own issues with all the companies that they've bought up and their whole ideology of, buy rather than compete. So it seems like they're just bracing for the inevitable. They have this antitrust stuff on one side of the chain. They have this entire privacy concern on the other side, and they know that they're just going to be eaten alive. And it's the nature of what you need to do to stay, alive in these enormous companies that are driven primarily on data collection. So I don't know. I don't think it's for good reasons they're doing this. I don't think it's for like altruistic reasons by any means.
They're just shoring up their core. They're shoring up their back end a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. They're making sure that when they do have to answer questions in front of some congressman who doesn't understand the internet, let alone Google, they're able to say, hey, we've taken these steps in the right direction. And, they can all kind of look and nod like that. One other good thing about what kind of this big Google Analytics update is it actually makes reporting a lot easier. If I could say one thing that pissed me off about Google Analytics before this big update was when you tried to generate like PDF reports of Google Analytics, it was like, okay, cool. We heard you want a PDF report. We're going to make sure you can't read any of this data, because it was like all compacted down and like into weird columns. And I was like, Yeah, I get that it's not necessarily the easiest thing to translate into an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, but it's like, why even offer it at a certain point? Now they've created a really, really kind of intuitive report builder that you can kind of drag widgets and create things and then actually share those with customized links or just through PDF downloads. So that's going to be kind of cool too, to kind of start to get clients more informed in their data and starting to really understand what different things mean, on their Google Analytics and on their site.
Yeah, definitely. And I wonder what it's also going to do to these third-party companies that come up because they're able to take all that information and put it into a more structured report to solely basically to be able to combat that. And make things more legible, which we as agencies, we've used a lot of those because analytics are hard to explain. And so we have, third-party softwares that combine it all together in a way that's easy to read, that actually even lets us have some say in how it's shared and stuff like that. So it's almost, it's weird. So as you were saying that, I'm like, well, so in Google becoming itself a little more transparent with analytics, they're creating for themselves a little bit more of a monopoly in the third-party analytics space where they're going to be able to be, and then you see where my head goes down the rabbit hole, and y'all have to stop me and tell me that I should not be that paranoid. But yeah, that's what it is, right? Like for whatever altruistic things that we see that Google might be doing to help businesses or whatever it might be, you can always look and see where there would be an opportunity for them to just continue being Google and continue gathering monopolies in different areas. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that all works out.
If you're going to school, maybe this is your first year of college, second year of college, maybe you're a senior in high school and you don't know what you want to do, but you like math, go into big data and big data aggregation, because that is going to be the degree to have moving forward, because all of these companies, these, billion, in some cases trillion now with Apple hitting that market cap dollar companies, they run almost primarily off of data and data sales, and that's what we're just seeing is how important that data is to kind of keeping these monoliths of tech kind of moving forward. So it's our job to kind of take it and make sense of it.
Yeah, that's been the conversation here in Albuquerque, because in Albuquerque, we put in that Facebook data center, which created all these new jobs. And it's just an unbelievable undertaking to have that data center here. That's what the conversation has been around, is just it's a step forward in big data. And particularly as New Mexico's government tries to diversify what kind of economic impact they have here and there, that's big conversation, along with Netflix and along with defense and along with Intel, like everything we've got out here. There's always a conversation about the push and pull over here is like big business and job creation versus, the kind of the culture that we've developed over here. But it's all these really big players like Facebook and Netflix that are kind of putting their hat in the ring for some reason. And I don't know the details, but that's their big conversations over here in Albuquerque and New Mexico, particularly.
Yeah. So. No, that makes perfect sense. Well, I mean, anything else as we kind of wrap up, final thoughts on this big transition for Google Analytics, as well as just kind of what it means, for personal data moving forward? Trace, you want to give your final thoughts?
No, it's just, I think a healthy dose of paranoia is okay. And, but also, I don't know. It's not, I just know learning about all this in college and then more so afterwards, it was always like, oh, this is cool, but it's also terrifying. But this is kind of cool, but it's also terrifying.
It's like all of life. It's kind of cool, but terrifying.
Exactly. And so it's like, I don't know, just always be open-minded, but also like realize like it could go south at some point too, or get weird. But yeah, I don't know. I'm excited to see where it goes. And like I said, I don't know if, I definitely don't think Google is doing this for, the good of mankind by any means, but, at least it's going in the right direction in a lot of ways. So hopefully it keeps going that way. And, even like I said earlier, if it makes our job a little harder, that's fine with me, as long as, our data's safe or as safe as it can be,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Kevin, what about you? What are your final thoughts on it all?
Well, the way that I always look for things, and I don't actually think I ever kind of said what I do. So I'm the
True.
market director for the New Mexico office, and also kind of the larger director of accounts for the agency itself. But in that, it's client care. It's talking strategically with these guys, about how do I advocate ethically for the client, right? We always talk about it, especially on the account side of the business. When you are meeting with clients and prospects, the conversation is always about meeting goals and growing your business, but then also doing that in such a way that's going to maintain your brand and allow you to grow efficiently and ethically, and that basically the relationship that an agency has with a client, when it functions properly, you are their marketing arm. You are kind of the voice in their ear, helping them through this. So it affects both of you. And so that's kind of the conversations that I'm having with clients, is that this is the conversation that needs to be had. That extra conversations need to happen to help clients understand how their campaigns are running, how we are collecting data for them, why things are working, why they're not working, why they're changing. And so for me, it's encouraging them to have that extra conversation. And sometimes, and granted, it's good for a business owner to not necessarily want to focus completely on marketing. I think the best relationships are you go do what you do best as a professional, and let us do what we do best as marketers to support you in that. And let's work cohesively and together on that. But that means that a lot of times business owners don't want to have these extra conversations, right? And really stressing the importance of these extra conversations that will help them understand how we can work together to help their brand move forward, with a clear understanding of how their campaigns are working, who they're reaching, why they're reaching them, and then what's coming down the pipe. It's scary to go to a client and say, hey, this is working really well for you. We might not be able to do it this way in another year. Let's start talking about why that's going to change, or why it's going to change, and how we can continue to be effective.
Yes.
So these are just all the things going into my mind, and all the things that I talk about with the other account executives in our agency. Is just the importance of having that full picture. And even if you are just on the account side, again, in the agency, still needing to understand some of this strategic and analytical stuff, and even understanding it from a creative side as well. And so those are just all the thoughts that always kind of go through my mind there.
No, yeah, I completely agree, especially in terms of having things looking forward, to what's coming around the pipe. Because if you don't do that now, you just get absolutely slammed, and you get hamstrung when these changes are then made, and nothing feels worse than when you get an email and you're like, hey, some software has deregistered, and you have to panic and change things over. And it's like, as industry leaders, it's our job to make sure that we're never in that position, especially for our clients. And no, I'm working on a blog right now that kind of goes over all the little differences here and there for the big Google Analytics changeover. So I'll be posting that up to GriffinWink.com here in the next week. And when you go and check that out, we'll share it on social media, I'm sure. But make sure you spend at least 10 seconds on the site, click on a few things to be safe.
Move your mouse around, go over the menu.
Yeah, exactly. Really engage with that. Yeah.
No, that'll be great, Eric. And I think that'll be even helpful, for us to read through that as well, and just kind of as a reminder of everything that's happening. Eric talked about the blogs that we write, that we put up on our website. We as GriffinWink have a lot of content that's coming out and that will be coming out. The blog on our site has all sorts of kind of musings about services, about changes. So it's a great place to go to, kind of like here, just stay on top of whatever's kind of happening week by week, month over month. Like we said in the beginning, we're going to be doing this sort of live stream every Wednesday. The panelists will change up, the topics will change up. And we hope that you find it interesting and helpful. We at GriffinWink, this isn't our only broadcast. We have another podcast that I do myself, along with our president, Brian Wink, and occasionally Eric joins us as well. That's called Life of the Brand. They're a little shorter. They're a little more kind of poignant, a little more highly produced. And so those are the one that's just another way that we have to get content out to you. And then, of course, we have all our social media channels. And the real goal for us is just in the interest of creating this content, making sure that clients, contacts, business people, students, like I said in the beginning, have access to what they need to know in order to make informed decisions on this. So is there anything else I needed to plug? Did I plug everything?
I think that was a great plug. Great plugs, just through and through. Absolutely quality stuff. I can't think of anything. Trace, did we leave anything off that we were supposed to plug?
No, just follow our social media sites, and we'll be posting, hopefully some highlights from the different conversations. We're going to start releasing it. We mentioned at the top, but we're going to if you missed the live stream, we're going to be releasing it as a podcast. So be sure to subscribe to that. Life of the Brand podcast as well, which was just mentioned. I'm trying to think of anything. I think we plugged everything. We just hope it's really informative for whoever needs this information. And I think that's it. I think that's all the plugs.
Right.
Well, I think that this was a pretty good break room, and I say we should probably get back to work, right?
I think so.
Good.
Well, thanks everyone for joining us, and thanks guys for jumping on. I think this was a great conversation.
All righty, y'all. Take it easy.